Congressman Matt Gaetz is here with brand new developments exclusive to the story. Good evening, everybody. I'm Martha MacCallum. Newly discovered text messages between top agent Peter Strzok and his lover, FBI lawyer Lisa Page, show the two discussing the potential of working on the Mueller special counsel team. Strzok wrote to Page, "You and I both know the odds are nothing. If I thought it was likely, I'd be there, no question. I hesitate in part because of my gut sense and concern there's no big there there." Remember from last night that after the election, these two, shocked at President Trump's win, also texted, "Now we're part of a secret society." They also discussed, as you remember, seeking an insurance policy of sorts to guard against a Trump win. Congressman Matt Gaetz has been leading the charge to uncover the alleged political bias within the FBI. But first, we go back to the White House. The chief national correspondent, Ed Henry, standing by live tonight. Hi, Ed.
Well, Martha, good to see an extraordinary 24 hours of leaks, basically potentially damaging to this White House, suggesting, among other things, that special counsel Robert Mueller wants to interview President Trump in the next few weeks about his firings of James Comey and retired General Michael Flynn, among other things. And a leak today about Mueller interviewing James Comey last year about his memos explaining his discomfort with his conversations with the president. Another leak that Mueller questioned Attorney General Jeff Sessions for several hours last week, and a leak that Sessions, at the president's urging, has been pressuring new FBI Director Christopher Wray to clean house and put in place Trump loyalists. Well, the president today flat out denied that Wray has been pressured, and the president's allies believe all of those leaks are an attempt to overshadow the impending release of that 4-page memo we've been talking about that will likely be damaging the FBI about Obama administration surveillance on Trump officials, plus all of these embarrassing FBI text messages you mentioned that the president declared today is one of the, quote, biggest stories in a long time. And breaking tonight, Republican Senators Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley demanding to know how several months of text messages between FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page suddenly went missing. Among the texts that Republicans have seen is a new one where Strzok and Page talk about a, quote, secret society shortly after the president's November 2016 victory. And in another, Strzok writes opaquely, "I personally have a sense of unfinished business. Unleashed it with the mid-year exam, the FBI's code name for the Clinton email case. Now I need to fix it and finish it." Now that sparked sharply different reactions today from Republicans and Democrats.
The correct reaction is we need to see the 5 months of missing texts, because who knows.
I think there has been a great deal of activity on the other side intending to either divert attention from Mueller or even stand in his way.
Then we learned today that Wray's chief of staff James Rybicki is out to Comey, and last month was grilled by the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee about the fact that he and Peter Strzok were involved in drafting Comey's statement exonerating Hillary Clinton before she was even interviewed by the FBI in that email investigation. And then today, Sarah Sanders here at the White House podium reiterated that the president is supportive of rank-and-file FBI agents, but believes the leadership under Comey became politicized. She added that the president has, quote, 100% confidence in Wray, whom he nominated for the FBI post, and is confident he's going to make the changes he needs to make. Martha?
Ed, thank you very much. So tomorrow, my next guest will be sending a letter to the FBI about those missing texts. And if he doesn't get answers soon, he says a congressional inquiry into the FBI will follow. Here now, Congressman Matt Gaetz. He sits on the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, welcome. Good to have you with us tonight. Tell me more about that. Tell me what you want to, in terms of this investigation and in terms of what you want specifically, because one of the concerns here is that it looked like the Attorney General had turned over all of the FBI texts in December of 2017. Well, now it appears that suddenly they disappeared.
Well, that is the operative question. Are these texts really missing? That's why tomorrow I'll be demanding to find out where the phones are, what the operating system upgrades were, when there was an original notice that there might have been missing information. But the key information, Martha, is that on December 13th of 2017, we had Mr. Horowitz, the Inspector General for the FBI, actually send a letter to Senator Ron Johnson saying that they had these text messages all the way through the month of June. So that would include the 5-month period that the FBI says they don't have these text messages for. So we've got conflicting information. Are the texts truly lost, or does the Inspector General have them? That's what Congress needs to find out immediately.
Yeah, I mean, do we know if Inspector Horowitz actually had possession of all of them? Or did someone just say to him, oh, we got them all, we got everything, without detailing for him the specifics that, actually 2 days after Mueller was appointed, we don't have the next 5 months?
Well, that is precisely the information that we have to find out, and it's why I'm sending a demand letter to get answers. But we have conflicting information. We have the FBI saying that the texts are lost, and then on the other hand, you have Mr. Horowitz sending a letter to Ron Johnson saying that he has text messages through June and then to the end of that month. And so, again, conflicting information, it demands answers. We also need to correct conflicting information. The President of the United States is going to allow the release of this memo if the Intelligence Committee holds a vote. The Intelligence Committee in the House has done a fantastic job under the leadership of Devin Nunes. The reports out that the president would reject the release of that memo are categorically false. I have every confidence he would allow it to enter the public square, because when you pair this memo, which I have read, with the purported missing 5 months of text messages, the overlay of that timeline is very interesting and tells quite a story, Martha.
All right, well, just to fill everybody in, what you're discussing now is the 4-page memo that was brought out by the House Judiciary Committee that shows all the evidence from the investigation, and it was released to the entire Congress, correct?
It was released to all members. Interesting, though, Democrats have actually boycotted a review of this memo, and so those who are not on the Intelligence Committee haven't seen it. I think it would be good for every member of Congress to read it, and then for us to have a public vote to release this memo to the American people so that everyone can see what was really going on at the
Congressman.
FBI.
Who's going to vote on whether or not it'll be released? And then the White House has to sign it. But do you need a majority on the committee? What do you need out of that committee in order to push this forward?
Excellent question. The very first thing we need is a vote of the Intelligence Committee. If the Intelligence Committee votes to release the memo, the President of the United States would have 5 days to either reject its release, accept its release, or take no action.
But in that vote, I'm sorry, just to clarify, in that vote in the Judiciary Committee, do you need a majority? Do you need the entire committee to be unanimous?
Just a majority of it's actually the Intelligence Committee that would make this decision. It would be a majority.
All right. So in terms of one more question for you, that 4-page memo, if you can't get it out, and I know you very much want that memo to be released, can you read it on the floor of Congress as has been suggested? Because you're protected. It's protected speech on the part of a congressman to stand there and read the whole thing. Would you ever do that?
I would not. I think that would set a very dangerous precedent that would really damage our ability to collect sensitive intelligence information and evaluate it in real time as the Congress should. We should utilize the process that Chairman Devin Nunes and the Intelligence Committee have laid out. We should hold a vote as soon as the Congress is back in session. And then I can tell you the president is going to allow this to be released.
All right. Bret Baier spoke with Senator Ron Johnson, who we were just talking about earlier, and he asked him about specifically the reference to a secret society that comes out in these texts. I want you to listen to this exchange and let me know what you think. Let's hear it.
In that secret society, we have an informant that's talking about a group that were holding secret meetings off-site. There's so much smoke here. There's so much suspicion.
Let's stop there. A secret society, secret meetings off-site of the Justice Department.
Correct.
And you have an informant saying that.
Yes.
Is there anything more about that?
No, we have to dig into it. This is not a distraction. Again, this is bias, potentially corruption at the highest levels of the FBI.
Congressman, what do you know about that?
These are the elements of a palace coup that was underway to disrupt President Trump.
It's almost laughable that FBI agents would discuss a secret society in a serious way. But now Senator Johnson says that there actually was a group that was meeting off-site and that they have an informant who says that. Are you aware of that? Do you have knowledge of that?
I do not have knowledge of the informant. I have read the text messages. And then when you compare this in the context of the memo that I hope is released very soon, I think the picture becomes very clear.
Congressman Gates, thank you very much. Good to see you tonight, sir.
Good to see you.
So here now with more Jonathan Turley, constitutional law attorney and a law professor at George Washington University. Jonathan, always good to have you with us.
Thanks, Martha.
Let's get your thoughts on the secret society exchange first there. What did you think about that?
Well, it's all very odd, isn't it? It forms a very strange picture. You don't want to be a conspiracy nut, but as Joseph Heller said, you may be paranoid, doesn't mean people aren't after you. The fact is you have a lot of these data points that create a troubling picture. Now, can you move those points around and it's less troubling? Yes. But there's no reason why we wouldn't want to get to the end of it. I think the important thing about these memos, these new disclosures, is that we're past the fail-safe line. We're past the point where we call these investigations back. I think that with both regard, with the Clinton controversies, the Trump controversies, the FBI controversies, we're going to have to let these investigations run to ground the truth, and they need to be as transparent as possible. And so I think that we're past that fail-safe line, and I think that's what you take from these. It doesn't mean that we know for sure that they were serious about secret meetings or whether there was, as the congressman said, some type of coup. We can put aside that type of rhetoric and focus on just getting some answers.
All right. So in terms of the other question that I raised with him, the possibility that he could stand on the floor of the Congress and read that 4-page memo that they want to get out.
Well, the speech and debate clause does protect you. You can. This happened during the Pentagon Papers controversy where they were read on the floor. So, yes, Christopher Cuomo suggested that on CNN. The congressman can also take it to the floor and light himself on fire with it. It's just that's not a really good idea. If you read that before it is declassified, your clearance will be stripped away. You'll likely face discipline from the House of Representatives, and there might be a shutdown of intelligence exchange with the executive branch. That seems to me a rather poor idea. It's like saying the president can self-pardon himself. Why doesn't he just commit a lot of crimes? Well, because he'd be immediately impeached. So there's lots of things you can do, but there's lots of things that have consequences.
But they're not necessarily a good idea. I want to put up this tweet from James Comey, which a lot of people found interesting, and there was quite a bit of commenting on it on Twitter today. This is with regard to the suggestion that the head of the FBI, Chris Wray, had been asked to let Andrew McCabe go. And James Comey says, good to read reports of people standing up for what they believe in. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Here's some of the follow-up, one from Ari Fleischer. I'm glad you feel this way. It may not be comfortable or convenient for you, but can you respond to the controversy created by texts contradicting you when you said Attorney General Lynch did not know what your findings were until you announced them? FBI agents said she knew. Your thoughts on that, Jonathan?
Well, the interesting thing about the Lynch controversy is that she didn't recuse herself. She said that she would basically comply or accept the decision of Comey. So it wouldn't necessarily be out of the ordinary for her to be given a heads up. But in terms of the contradiction with Comey's testimony, that's more serious. Comey has a number of controversies and a number of problems that he has to deal with. Many of us were surprised that William and Mary is going to have Comey teach a course on ethical leadership. And I think it's a little early for that course to be posted. He's accused of taking what is now considered classified material from the FBI, that those memos were FBI material he's not supposed to take, and leaking it, the information to the media. That's quite a challenge for Comey to overcome.
Yeah, they might have some interesting debates in that class. Jonathan, thank you. One would hope, because you want to hear both sides. Jonathan, thank you very much. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you, Martha.
Coming up.
I'm going to Davos. We'll be talking about investing in the United States again for people to come in and spend their money.
So with the world on notice that President Trump's policies seem to be working here at home with regard to the economy, how will he fare when he enters the bubble of globalism, the den of globalism, as it's called, in Davos, the World Economic Forum? And with all the debate over the future of DACA, many forget that this began with that White House that you see on the left-hand side of your screen, how the president's predecessor's lack of action got us where we are today and shut down the government. When Mark Thiessen and Matt Bennett debate this next.
What I can guarantee is that we will have in the first year an immigration bill that I strongly support and that I'm promoting.
Visit Credible.com before your next payment is due.
President Obama, when he signed the executive order, actually said he doesn't have the right to do this. And so you do have to go through Congress, and you do have to make it permanent. Whether he does, whether he doesn't, let's assume he doesn't. You said it. And that was a temporary stopgap.
See Steny Hoyer agreeing there. That was President Trump earlier this month, pointing out what everyone seems to be forgetting in the DACA debate, which is that President Obama started DACA, but he didn't finish it. In 2012, he put DACA in place to provide temporary legal status to illegal immigrants who were brought to the United States as minors. At the time, Republicans and even some Democrats felt that it was an overreach of executive power. Trace Gallagher, live in our West Coast newsroom, lays out the backstory tonight. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Martha. 17 times then President Obama said that he lacked the power to change immigration law. In fact, when he was asked directly during an online forum if he was willing to take executive action on immigration to make sure families are not split apart, Mr. Obama responded by saying this. Watch.
The problem is that, I'm the President of the United States. I'm not the Emperor of the United States. My job is to execute laws that are passed.
But even during his first 2 years as president, when Democrats controlled both the House and the Senate, there was never a push for immigration reform. Then in 2010, Republicans regained control of the House. But after winning re-election in 2012 and watching another immigration bill implode, President Obama grew impatient and then said this. Watch.
We are not just going to be waiting for legislation. I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions.
So in June of 2012, after acknowledging that he did not have the constitutional power to change the immigration status of broad categories of people, President Obama signed DACA and changed the immigration status of 800,000 illegal immigrants, allowing the so-called dreamers to remain in the U.S. and legally work and attend school. The president later tried to go further by implementing DAPA, or Deferred Action for Parents of Americans, but the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals halted that executive order, and the Supreme Court allowed the court decision to stand. And Attorney General Jeff Sessions and other prominent legal scholars have now concluded that if DAPA is illegal and unconstitutional, so is DACA. Martha.
Trace, thank you. Here now, Mark Thiessen, former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Matt Bennett is the co-founder of Third Way and a former deputy assistant to President Clinton. Gentlemen, welcome. Good to have both of you with us.
Martha.
So, Matt, what do you say about that premise that President Obama began this process and then he chose to do other things? He focused on Obamacare. He focused on other things. He had a majority. He had the House. He had the Senate. He had a 60-person majority, in fact, in the Senate. But he didn't take action on this when he had the chance.
Yeah, Martha, I remember those. Those were good days. We had the majority for 2 years. And as you'll recall, the big thing happening at that time was that we were on the way to losing 8.7 million jobs in the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. And the president just had to focus. I think if you asked Obama today, he would stipulate, he would acknowledge that he failed. He failed to do a bunch of things that he couldn't get done in those first 2 years. The things he really felt he needed to do were stabilize the economy, which he did, and get health care done, which President Clinton had failed to do when we were in the White House. So, yeah, it was a failure. But the first two words of DACA are deferred action. Everyone understood that
it was
this
temporary.
was just a defer. Yeah.
And now Congress has to deal with it. And, you know, this is going to come right back up on February 8th, Mark.
It absolutely is going to come right back up, and the Democrats are not going to shut down the government again because it didn't go very well for them the first time. But going back to what Matt said over there, you know, there was an economic crisis. They had to focus on that. He focused on Obamacare. He introduced Obamacare in March, and there was plenty of time to focus on Obamacare, which had nothing to do with the economic recovery. The fact of the matter is, in 2008, President Obama campaigned on a promise to take up immigration reform in his first year in office. He did an interview with Jorge Ramos on Univision where he said, it might not be in my first 100 days, but within my first year in office, I'm going to introduce a bill and we're going to push it and we're going to get it passed for you. And he had control of the White House, he had control of the House of the Representatives, and he had a 60-vote filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. And he didn't do it. And you know who else didn't act? Chuck Schumer, the guy who's running around with his hair on fire yelling DACA, DACA, DACA right now, he was the chairman of the Immigration Subcommittee responsible for writing the bill in 2009. He didn't produce a bill. Nancy Pelosi was the speaker.
It's a great question. And now Chuck Schumer has a lot of problems on his hand because he sort of took this gambit, Matt, and many in the party are not happy with him. Look at this quote from the Politico piece today. California's 2 Democratic senators can barely contain their anger after Chuck Schumer cut a deal with Mitch McConnell to reopen the government. The turn of events Monday marked the most serious cracks in the unity Schumer has painstakingly built with his caucus since he became the Democratic leader a year ago. Can he survive this, Matt?
Oh, yeah, no question about it. There is broad support for Chuck Schumer. There is no doubt that he survives this. And look, being leader is hard. It means making tough decisions. Schumer hasn't had to make a bunch of them so far because Trump has made it impossible for Schumer to cut deals.
But how do you get past? How do you get past?
No,
hold on a second, Matt.
You can laugh
how do you
all
get
you want,
past
Mark, but that's true.
what Mark just laid out? The fact that Chuck Schumer had an opportunity. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, President Obama, they were all lined up across the board. They could have made this happen probably very quickly when they had the chance. But now he's expressing it as this dire need that everyone, and it turns out that people in America were not in favor of it. They didn't want to see a shutdown with DACA attached. They said, yes, it's an issue. We do care about these kids, but it's not really our priority at the moment.
Martha, and there was no crisis. It was a manufactured crisis, Martha, because the DACA deadline was March 5th, so there was 6 weeks away. There was no one was about to get deported. There was no reason to shut down the government. So even if and on top of that, Donald Trump created the March 5th deadline. He said he would extend it if we needed more time to negotiate. So there is no crisis here. And the problem is with the shutdown, Martha, is that it has made a deal harder, because Chuck Schumer today went out and said, that extra money for the wall I promised you, I'm taking that off.
I mean, it really,
there's not going to be a deal without a wall.
Let me get a last comment from Matt on that, because there's sort of an 8th grade nature of this debate. It's like, you can have the $1.6 billion for the wall. Oh, no, you can't. I'm taking it back. I mean, if he thought the wall was a good deal for the trade for DACA, that more border security, which Democrats have supported for a long time, was a good idea, why is it suddenly not a good idea anymore?
Look, the public negotiation is all baloney. People come out and they posture, but as Mark knows well, you don't have your real negotiation in front of television cameras if you're going to actually get anything done. And to the earlier point, he couldn't have done it quickly. Immigration reform is incredibly complicated and incredibly politically fraught. So both Schumer and Obama were facing very long odds, even with control of both houses of Congress. I mean, Trump's finding out now you can control both houses of Congress, but it's still tough to get stuff done.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Matt and
Thank
Mark,
you, Martha.
Good to
be here.
So coming up next, President Trump is heading to the big global economic forum. Trees covered in snow, chalets everywhere. America first. The message, how's it going to go over there, and how will it be received by the global elites of Davos? Lisa Booth and Wendy Asefo on that. Plus, a big day in Hollywood as the Oscar nominations are announced. But there is one name that really nobody expects to come up except for one person out there, Ronald Reagan. Will he ever get a golden statue posthumously? Coming up.
We were going to run away. She'd been getting out to meet me for a long time. Do I need to say anything more?
Did Dr. Tower know anything about this?
I guess I wouldn't be here today if he had.
The world grows. When the world grows, we grow. We're part of it. We're part of a world economy, and the president believes that.
That was White House National Economic Council Director Gary Cohn giving us a preview of what to expect when President Trump arrives in Davos on Thursday morning for the World Economic Forum, traditionally kind of a safe space for globalists, you might say. The New York Times quoting, "It's hard to imagine an audience less receptive to Mr. Trump's America First agenda, yet whether he's seeking reconciliation or pitching for strongman status, his mere presence is a rebuke to the elites who got him badly wrong." That from the New York Times. Here now, Lisa Booth, Fox News contributor, and Wendy Asefo, political commentator. I find this fascinating. This was sort of a, not last minute, but, it wasn't really on the books for a long time. And the word is that Emmanuel Macron said, everybody's going to be there. And that President Trump felt, maybe I want to be there too. And it's called Creating a Shared Future in a Fractured World. Wendy, do you think they were expecting him?
No, I don't think they were expecting him just by the sheer theme of what it's called. And quite frankly, the president can come in and he can tout the economic numbers of the United States, tout the stock market, all of that good stuff. But unfortunately, the WEF not only speaks to economics, it also speaks to human rights. And that will be the issue. This is a forum that talks about what is it like to be an immigrant, a day in the life, the Paris Climate Agreement, all things that this president has vehemently opposed. So we will see firsthand where this America First and everyone else last rhetoric takes the global stage.
Yeah.
And that may be problematic.
You know, America First, Lisa, is such a powerful motto, right? Whether you love it or hate it, no one will ever look at this administration and say, well, what were they about? You know, what did they stand for? It couldn't be more clear. And with the record that he has now, especially economically, he walks in there in a fairly good position, doesn't he?
Absolutely. And to your first point about Macron, it sounds like even presidents get peer pressured into doing things.
He doesn't like to miss out. He has FOMO.
No, he doesn't like to miss out. But he should be there. And he's talking about tax cuts and the law that he recently passed. It has had a huge impact on growth here in the United States and globally as well. The IMF issued a report ahead of the World Economic Forum stating that they expect global growth to be around 3.9% in 2018. As well as 2019, and they accredit the tax cut law for roughly half of that growth. So, I mean, that is huge. So it's not just the United States that is benefiting from this economic boom. It's also the world.
Yeah, and there's the tariff issue that came out today as well. The United States slapping tariffs on imports of solar panels and also washing machines. And when you dig into it, it's not particularly onerous, but it does send a very strong message, Wendy, of America First. Like, you know, we want to come, we want to talk to you guys, we want to talk about trade and partnering in different ventures, the president said, but it's always going to be in our what we feel is in our best interest. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that, and I think that that's his strong point, actually, is when he comes in and if he sticks to the script and he continues to talk about economics, it'll be great. But what's going on now is there are already people outside protesting. There's more people who are predicted that they will come to protest his arrival. So that's going to be the issue.
Yeah, I don't think he cares about protesting.
I don't think that that's what's going to bother him, but I think what's going to be really interesting is he's scheduled to meet with the chairman of the African Union. If you remember, on January 12th, the African Union issued a statement saying they want an apology from the president for his comments where he called certain countries in Africa asshole countries. So that'll be interesting to see how that exchange turns out.
But it also sounds like you don't want to talk about any of the economic successes that we've had as a result of the Trump administration and his policies, including the tax cut law. And as I mentioned, that's a huge story. That's going to be a huge story around his speech, talking about the benefits of deregulation, talking about the benefits of changing our tax code, and the great impact that has had on the economy, both here in the U.S. as well as globally, as well as the confidence that's instilled on CEOs in the United States as well as globally as well.
You know, I'm going to do a story right after this break, actually, about the leader from Uganda and what he had to say about President Trump, which I thought was pretty interesting. Also, just to mention on the way out, J.P. Morgan investing $20 billion in the United States. They obviously do a ton of international work as well, 20,000 jobs, a lot of new branches, and they say it's thanks to the tax cuts. So we just see story after story like that, which is remarkable.
I guess if this is Armageddon, then bring it on.
If we stick to the economics, he's good. But once we shift to the civil human rights issue, that's where the problem will arise.
All right. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Lisa. Good to see you both.
Thank you, Martha.
So the battle for control of Congress is kicking into high gear, but one big question still remains. What about Mitt Romney? Will we see Mitt Romney in the ticket? That's one of the big questions that remains. Ronna Romney McDaniel, chairman of the Republican Party, to talk about all the races across the country and maybe a little bit about that one, too, when we come back.
The RNC's raised record money. We know that the midterms of the first term of the presidency are usually brutal. We've been ready for it. We're in 22 states. We have the best data and ground game. We're ready to compete.
I'm Mark. Country. That word, which we have seen a million times in the past week, right? Earlier this month, President Trump ignited a firestorm when leaks from inside the Oval Office claimed that he used that term to describe certain third world countries. But the Ugandan president told the Ugandan legislature today, quote, "I love Trump because he tells Africans frankly, the Africans need to solve their problems. The Africans are weak." This coming from the Ugandan president. President Trump has denied using that phrase. He admits to, quote, tough language during those very heated discussions over immigration negotiations. And as we said before, he will be speaking with African leaders in Davos as well. So we'll let you know what comes out of that. So also developing tonight, a series of new polling on 2018 and 2020 that signal a tough battle ahead for control of Congress and the White House, which could be very problematic for President Trump. According to the new Real Clear Politics average of polls for the 2018 congressional midterm races, Democrats have a 7-point advantage, but that is down 6 points from just last month. Here now, Ronna McDaniel, chair of the Republican National Committee. Ronna, good to see you.
Great to be here.
So what's your interpretation of those numbers?
Well, they're going up, like you've seen. Americans are seeing the benefit of this historic tax reform. We've already seen 2 million people in this country benefit from bonuses or higher wages or increases in their 401k. You saw the great news from Disney today and JP Morgan Chase. That's going to continue, and then they're going to get bigger paychecks. So they're looking at this president. They're saying these are the things he ran on. These are the things he's accomplishing, and they're feeling better about Republicans.
So talk to me about what you're most concerned about. I know you want to increase the GOP in the Senate. The Casey race is one that you're going after. There are others. Tell us.
There's lots of opportunities in the Senate. The president won 10 states where there's where there's Democrat incumbent senators, red states, Indiana, Missouri, Wisconsin, Florida. The list goes on and on. Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Those are states where we feel like we have opportunities to pick up seats. West Virginia, North Dakota. We're already in those states where we were hitting pretty hard on those senators when they voted to shut down the government. On the House, we know that historically, the party that holds the White House has a tough midterm.
Definitely.
We've been ready for that. We've been gearing up. We've raised record money. We're in 22 states.
Democrats only need 24 seats, and the Cook Report had them up by 40. So that's got to make you nervous.
Well, no, not based on what we've done. I mean, we're always going to have that urgency, but the RNC's in the best position we've ever been going into a midterm. We've raised the most money, but we've also had trainings across all 50 states. We plan on playing in every single race, and we have so many more resources than the DNC. We feel good about our data and our ground game and our message. What President Trump has done to make people's lives better. What are Democrats going to run on? Resist, obstruct, shut down the government? They don't have a message to run on. So when voters go in November, they're really going to ask themselves, am I better off under this president and under Republican leadership? And I feel good about that.
So there's a candidate who's considering running in Utah who you may know about.
I don't know who that is.
And he wasn't so kind to President Trump when he was running for president. This is what he said.
Donald Trump is a phony, a fraud. His promises are as worthless as a degree from Trump University. His domestic policies would lead to recession. His foreign policies would make America and the world less safe.
So, those last two pieces of that I find interesting. And I'm curious if Governor Romney feels differently about how President Trump has handled the economy and how he has handled his relationships with other countries in the world today. Does he?
Well, I can't speak for my Uncle Mitt, just like I can't speak for a lot of my family members.
You've never talked to him about Donald Trump?
We don't talk about it. Like a lot of families, there's some subjects that are off the table. And I know he does. He has said in his tweets and through his public comments that he feels good about this president and champions him. And I think our party is coalescing around this president. We've seen the great leadership he's provided. We are definitely safer under President Trump. Look at ISIS. It's on the run. Look at our military standing, our troops getting their first raise in 10 years.
So if he runs and if he wins, is he going to be like Lindsey Graham and John McCain? Is he going to be a thorn in the president's side when it comes to some issues, or will he support him wholeheartedly?
I can't say what he's going to do, but I'll tell you what my advice is to every Republican. Focus on Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. Embrace our president, support our president. He's making our country better. Focus on Democrats who, if they take the reins of this country, are going to take us backwards. And they didn't support these tax cuts. They didn't support all these things that we're doing that are so good for our military, for our country, for our middle class. Let's focus on them. Let's keep the fire off each other.
President Trump involved in these congressional races?
Oh, I think he'll be very involved. President Trump likes to campaign. He's a fighter. He wants to make sure he keeps those majorities. So he'll be all over the country.
But looking at his approval numbers, you're not concerned, and candidates aren't concerned across the country about having him out there with them?
So the first rule of politics is turn out your base. Our base loves President Trump. You can see that in our record fundraising. You can see that in the engagement, the trainings we had this weekend. I just had one in Florida. Our base is so energized by this president and what he's doing. You got to turn out your base. Then you go after other voters, and nobody.
So you're advising them, embrace President Trump.
Nobody's better than turning out our base than President Trump. Right. Nobody.
Ronna, good to see you. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So when we come back, President Reagan's secret regret. Why the former actor turned commander-in-chief was reportedly hurt by his friends in Hollywood. Mark Weinberg, President Reagan's former press secretary and special advisor, with the inside story on this next.
What's your name? Kip. George Kip. What's yours?
good. You're